Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the Talk of the Mac community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. And this is a Mac Voices briefing on the MacVoices 10th anniversary. 10 years ago, Mac Voices started up along with Mac Notables, and it seemed not quite right to let 10 years pass without making some notation of the milestone. You've probably been watching some of the Mac Notables on Mac Voices 10th anniversary shows we've been doing with that panel, because Mac Notables turns 10 this year as well. But doing a full-blown 10th anniversary show seemed a bit self-indulgent and also a little bit difficult from a practical standpoint. I had a lot of suggestions about what to do. Go back and recreate the first show. Bring in some of your most frequent guests. Well, I've had a lot of those. Bring in some of your favorite guests. They're all my favorite guests, or they would never have been on the show. A lot of great ideas, but again, just a little self-indulgence. So what I thought I'd do is just, for those of you who may be new to Mac Voices and maybe those who don't know the history, just tell you a little bit about it, so you know where we've been, and hopefully you'll be able to find out where we're going to. So in 2001, which predates Mac Voices a bit, in 2001 I started producing a show called the User Group Report. At the time, I was serving as chairman of Apple's User Group Advisory Board at a time when user groups were a bit more active than they are at this point. And I discovered that there were so many great user group stories out there in the Mac community that were not being told. User groups were doing a great job in their home territories, but they were doing a lousy job of letting anybody outside of those home territories know about it. So the User Group Report came online to try to tell some of those stories. And over the years, it evolved a bit, still keeping very much a user group focus, but also pulling in some of the Mac celebrities of the time, and a lot of those you know now as even bigger and better Mac celebrities. Then in 2005, podcasting came along, and it sort of changed things, because I was admittedly running out of user group stories to tell. I had a lot bigger interest in the broader Apple tech community, Mac at the time, really. And so decided to change the show to Mac Voices to make it very clear that there was a branding change, a little bit of a focus change and all, and to set it up as a podcast, which we did. And at the same time, Mac Notables came online too. And you can hear part of that story in the recent conversation I had with Adam Angst and Bob Levitas on Mac Notables on Mac Voices, celebrating the 10th anniversary. They ended up telling me some things I didn't even know about how they viewed Mac Notables at the time. But anyway, so from there, it just kind of grew. Produced a limited number of shows. Back then, it was a lot more Mac Notables heavy. But of course, as time goes on, people get involved in other things. Everyone gets busy, and there were also so many great people to talk to in the Mac community that I wanted to build up that side of it as well. A little while later, the Mac Jury came along, simply because up to that point, Mac Voices had been pretty much a one-on-one, occasionally one-on-two kind of thing. The Mac Jury gave me a chance to do a panel show and to broaden out into talking about activities, passing judgment on things, or at least giving opinions on things, and made it a lot of fun. And of course, along the way, I dabbled in video for a while, and that's where Mac Voices TV came from. At the time, and as everything evolved, it all made sense to have it separate identities, separate websites. There were some very good reasons to do that. But admittedly, looking back, it did create a bit of a mess. We have fans of Mac Notables that didn't even know about Mac Voices, and vice versa. So decided to pull, in relatively recent times, I decided to pull everything back together under the Mac Voices brand. Continue, obviously, with the same kind of formats, and the shows are titled the same, but everything is under the Mac Voices brand. Then I decided to take everything video, because I felt like it was very important, and it is very important for you to see these people, to know that they're real people. They're not just voices. To see the personalities, see the senses of humor, and recognize that we have a lot of fun here doing those shows, and hopefully you have fun watching them. So that's where we've been. My association with the Mac Roundtable came somewhere in there as well, and that is just a fantastic group of independent Mac podcasters. I used to introduce the group as the rock stars of independent Mac journalism, and I still feel that way. An amazing group. But it's been a very interesting ride. I always get the question of, well, how many shows have you produced? Well, I really honestly, I have no idea. If you go back and count the user group report shows, obviously even more. But because of some of the crossovers between MacVoices and MacVoices TV, Mac Notables and MacVoices TV, the Mac Jury and MacVoices, it's a bit of a mess that I'm still trying to clean up a little bit so that there's a clear, concise archive of the shows and how to go back and look at them. But I really don't know how many shows I've done. That's never been the point. Although I do get a bit of ribbing from some of my fellow podcasters about my numbering scheme. And if you haven't heard this or haven't figured it out yet, it's pretty simple, really. If you take the first number or two, depending on how far back you go, of the show, that's the year. And then anything beyond that is the number of the show within that year. I adopted that because it made it easy for me to go back and get an idea of how long ago a show had been, how far back a show had been. Instead of just being show number, 450, well, that doesn't tell you anything. I have no idea whether, that was 3 years in or 5 years in. So that way you can kind of figure out where the shows are. So no, I have not done 15,000 shows. Get that out of your mind right now. So coming up in 2016, the shows will start with 16, and it'll be 16001, and we'll work from there. So that's how the naming convention happened. What can I tell you? It's been an amazing ride. I feel so fortunate to have had so many great people on the show. I've had some great conversations, had some amazing trips to Macworld and CES and NAB, Photo Plus Expo, the Final Cut Super Meets, met a lot of just wonderful people, and hopefully I've been able to bring some of that to you, let you share in it a little bit and enjoy it right along with me. A couple thank yous I want to do for this to wrap it up. First of all, I want to thank all the guests. The guests have been amazing. The Take Control authors have always been so giving of their time to talk about the topics that they write about, but there's so many others out there as well that have come on as regular guests or occasional guests to talk about what they're doing, to give us some insight into the Apple universe from their perspectives. So if you've ever been a guest on Mac Voices once or many times, thank you so much for your contribution to the show. Hopefully your friends and your audience has got something out of it as well. Second, I definitely want to thank the sponsors. It took me a little while to take on sponsors for a variety of reasons. One sponsor I definitely want to call out, though, is Smile. Smile was my first sponsor. Smile is still a sponsor today. They're the longest-running sponsor of Mac Voices because they were there on day one. Their support has been invaluable in helping me build the show and do things that I wanted to do with it, and hopefully the things that I can continue to do with it. So thank you guys very much for all the support. To all the other sponsors, thank you as well, because I couldn't have done a lot of the things more recently that I've done with your help. So thank you so much. But most important, I want to thank you, the listener, the viewer, for the hours you've given me watching or listening to what we do here. It's been amazing. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, how much I enjoy hearing from you. Back when the show started, there really was no such thing as social media. It's a lot easier now for us to communicate, and I always enjoy hearing from you, getting your ideas, finding out what you like, finding out what you don't like, finding out what you'd like to hear and see. Hopefully, I can deliver on part of that. Obviously, there are limitations to things. You can't accommodate every request, but I really do appreciate those, and keep them coming. If you have something that you'd like to see, somebody you'd like to hear from, let me know. I'll do my best to get them on the show. So thank you so much for 10 amazing years of Mac Voices and Mac Notables. Not quite as many on the Mac Jury or Mac Voices TV. Here's to another 10 years. Thanks for watching, and I'm Chuck Joyner, and we'll be back with another episode of Mac Voices real soon. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the Mac Voices blog. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the Mac Voices Dispatch, to stay up to date on all the latest Mac Voices news from our front page or at macvoices.com/newsletter. Do more with your Apple tech by subscribing to the free Mac Voices magazine on Flipboard by visiting macvoices.com/magazine. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.